Welcome to the Enlighten Up podcast, where I am going to take you into a deep exploration of what it means to exist in this current reality. We are going to raise your vibes, open your mind, expand your heart, and dive deep into the wondrous mysteries and possibilities of this lifetime. There's been a spiritual catalyst that has set in motion the awakening process of many across the globe to return to the knowingness of self and unite what has been separated. Together, we're going to bring light into that darkness. We're going to remember the joy of living. But most of all, we're going to turn up the volume of our own eternal power and do the thing we're here to do. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Enlighten Up podcast. I'm really excited to bring a brand new guest to the show for you today. His name is Musica, and he is an SEO expert, but he is also a plant medicine enthusiast and psychic animal communicator. And he was introduced to San Pedro cactus about 7 years ago, which eventually led him down a path towards animal communication, unbeknownst to him. And so he had his first psychedelic experience in his early 20s, and it took him nearly 25 years before those kinds of experiences would resurface for him once again. And now that he's in his adult life, now these experiences are considered a little more normal. But he now is going to share with us how he got to speaking with animals. And I'm really excited, Nick, to have you on the show because, well, one, everyone on my podcast knows I'm I love plant medicine. It's not for everyone, and I would never tell someone to take it just because it's something you definitely feel called to. When you first had your first plant medicine experience, was it more just for fun or was it like for spiritual reasons?
Yeah, no. So it was in my 20s, right? So we were all 20 once, and there was a bunch of good ideas in our 20s that we said were good ideas. And
Yeah.
and for me, I had a little bit of time with LSD, not a lot, like an experience or two with LSD, with synthetic mesk and mushrooms. And I only did mushrooms once, and there was a reason for it, is because the first time I did mushrooms was at a dead show I think it was at Giant Stadium, and I got a bag of mushrooms, and I'm walking around eating them, and I don't know, 20 minutes later, a buddy of mine looks at me and he says, "Did you eat all those mushrooms?" And I said, I did." Oh, you shouldn't have done that. And so that was my first experience with them. So to do too much at a dead show was probably a bad idea.
Yeah, I would say so.
Uh-huh.
I just don't feel like mushrooms are the greatest one to do in large crowds.
No, no. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, and so I didn't. So when shift to 25 years later or whatever the actual time was, right?
Mhm.
A buddy of mine calls me up and he says, are you coming on Saturday? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. He says, you said you would come if my guest couldn't come. Well, what were you even talking about? A San Pedro ceremony. Oh, which is a psychedelic cactus, right? So it's mescaline is the active chemical there. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. Tell me about what's going on Saturday. All right, it was San Pedro, and you talk to God, and it starts at 9 and ends roughly at 9, 12 hours. Like, oh my God, it's a long time. And at some point in the conversation, he said, just come, you'll enjoy it. And I was like, okay, all right, I'll go. Because I was comfortable with the chemicals from 20 years ago. As much as it was a bad idea to take a fistful of mushrooms at a dead show, I have fond memories of the chemicals. I enjoyed them. I liked
Mhm.
them. Um, so I felt comfortable with that. I had no idea about the broader, bigger context and the bigger conversation, right? So, we get off the phone and I do what everyone else does. I go to Google. I'm like, what am I getting into on Saturday? San Pedro cactus. Like, what is this thing? And, kept hearing things like talk to God and spiritual awakening. And I'm like, just not identifying with it. I went to school. I went to Catholic school for only 12 years. That's my standard Catholic school joke. Only 12 years. Um, so, like I was in that form of spirituality, but again, didn't really, wasn't necessarily for me.
Yeah.
But I heard all the words, seen, spent some time with the chemicals, but the context was just something that I was just not expecting. And so I go there and I'm sort of trying to figure out what I'm doing there. And so I ask everyone what they're doing there. And I start to hear the same things that Google would tell you. And I talk to God and, spiritual awakening. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's what's happening today. I guess, right? That's the narrative that's going around. And after
So what year was this?
this is 2017.
Okay.
Hmm. And and I was blown away. I mean, I was shocked, amazed, all the things, all the good times about it. And yeah, everything they say online is true about
How
opening
is,
up and mhm.
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. How is
Yeah,
San
go.
Pedro consumed? Like, how do you take it? What's the ceremony like?
I can only tell you how I've done it. There's
Hmm.
there's there's tea and there's other means, capsules. I've never done those things. I can only tell you that the way that I've consumed it is it's dried out. It's a cactus that's been dried out. Some amount of it goes into a little cup. Water gets added to it. You want to stir it up as best and fast as you can and drink it as best as fast as you can without having it come back up because
Yeah.
it's very bitter. It's not if you ever drink aloe, like it's sort of the closest thing
Oh,
to
see, I
drink.
can do aloe shots, no big deal.
Whew.
But
Yeah.
I also can just my immediate thing is, oh, let me just go to taking a brew cup of ayahuasca, and that's just brutal to get down. So
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, aloe is sort of the closest thing I can equate it to. Also, it's a world away,
yeah.
right?
Okay.
It's probably I've never done ayahuasca, but I would imagine it's probably closer to ayahuasca than it is to
Mm-hmm.
aloe,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and here's the other thing: it's a cactus,
Yeah.
so it will never form back into a cactus, right? It will never do that. But the longer it sits and gets hydrated again, it sort of starts to want to get into cactus mode, which means it turns into sort of like a gummy worm that's been overheated on a hot day, right? That's the consistency of it. So you want it to, not great, right? Not great. So yeah, I'm not selling it. I'm not
Yeah,
selling.
no.
I know I'm not. And so you want to take it in as best as you can,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and so in about an hour-ish after that, the world starts to feel a little funny. Starts to feel a little lighter. Depending on how sensitive you are to energy, the more it may come in faster than
Mm.
not, the more severe it may come in or heightened, whatever. And then about a half hour after that, the chit chat, the hey, how's it going? Nice to meet you conversations start to get very quiet. And then energy starts to run and then things start to show up and you see things like just from my experience, you see things, you hear things, you get information dropped on you that's pretty darn valuable.
Mm. Okay. And how long did the ceremony last for you at least? From the moment you took the drink to.
Yeah. So let's start with before even taking the drink. So before you even take the drink, you're sitting around in a circle saying, "I'm here for this intention. Here's what it means to me today." Right. And so multiply that by 20 people or whatever the actual head count is. Um, and then everyone's drinking. And then you try to find your space that you want to hunker down in. At least that's what I do.
Hmm.
I try to hunker down into one spot, put a sheet over my head, and don't come up until I really need to. That's my MO typically. And so it pretty much goes to 9 in the morning to about 8 o'clock at night. And that doesn't mean that you're finished running the San Pedro at 9 o'clock. It just means that the peak has come and gone.
Hmm.
And so that peak will come and gone roughly around, I don't know, 1 o'clock ish, 2 o'clock, something like that.
Hmm.
But there's a lead into it, and then I mean, time is distorted when you do it.
Yeah.
And so maybe around like 3 or 4, you can start to communicate with people if you wanted to. I try not to. I try to just to be with it for as long as I possibly can.
Yeah.
Even after all the messaging is done, it's just really a pleasure just to be with it and feel
Mm-hmm.
it.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree. Because it can really take you out of that state really fast. And there could
Yeah.
still be things that come to you that you're not able to receive after that. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, so you go into ceremony and
Hmm.
all of a sudden like you're chit-chatting with people, but then you're realizing, okay,
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Something's going on. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
start
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. I mean, the first time for me, I got one piece of information. I was like, this is amazing. And I took myself out of it because that what I got was it in my brain, right? Well, I've been spending time with San Pedro every 6 to 12 months since then, and learned, well, if you don't take yourself out of it, there's way more information to come,
Mm,
right? And it has sort of its own natural cycle to it. And what you were describing, at least for me, is, even after all the messaging is sort of done and you're just feeling the energy moving, there can still be some processing time and time to give it context. And if something didn't really make sense, but most of it does make sense. Like when it comes in, when it lands on you, you go, oh, this is what it is, this is what it's about, at least for me. And the application could look like this, right? So a lot of it's really in the moment. But there could be some amount of processing and adding context and figuring it out on the back end as you're just sitting there in the energy of it all.
okay, so what was the big thing that came to you then in your first ceremony with San Pedro?
Mm. Um, that's a tricky question. Yeah. So it was really about my wife, my relationship with my wife. And it was pretty humbling for me.
Mm,
It was around um and it was about my wife, my relationship with her, and myself. It was about loving all the pieces of you and all the things, and really the accepting of all of them. Like there's no picking and choosing. It's all of it.
mm.
That
And what
was that
was
was a
what
big
was
lesson.
humbling for you? Like what was it about it that was like, were you struggling with something in particular?
Not really. It's when the messaging comes, there's so much energy attached to it. I mean, it could be such a simple message.
I know.
Right? And it's just like, oh, like, I mean, think about the opposite of that statement is you weren't loving self, your relationship, and your wife entirely. Right? Like that's on the other side of the coin, that's what's happening there.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh shit. Like that's really, well, you wouldn't be getting this message if that wasn't true. Right?
Fair statement. Yes.
And so it's a very humbling, like it's there's more than one emotion that runs through, but it's certainly a piece of humbling that comes through as well.
So you got this message. This this was in 2017.
Mhm.
And when did you go to the psychic or the medium who told you you were going to be starting to communicate with animals?
Yeah, so that was about 2 years ago.
Oh, okay. So after that, you still hadn't any awareness that you were going to be communicating with animals one day.
No,
Okay.
no, not even a
Uh-huh.
little, not even a little. Yeah, so that was 2017, and out of that came I wanted to really explore something that was happening for years with me, which I learned it was something called clairvoyant dreams. So
Hmm.
it's about dreaming about a specific event. Very, for me, it was very nonsense. There was nothing material to it. It could have been a random thing. The way I describe it is like you see a random dog in a random corner, you dream about it in a random city. Like that's just the dream, whatever. Like it could be about anything, everyday things,
Hmm.
nothing crazy, nothing you would write home about, right? But then at some point, you end up living these pieces of your dreams. Like you're in a random city and you drive by a random corner and you see that dog and you're like, there's nothing random about that. Like, so that type of thing would show up uh, e- every now and again for about 20 years. The first time it happened was when I was 20 and it was very unsettling. And there's no one to talk to about that. Not then, certainly. And in 2017, with the San Pedro, with the want to understand what that was, I started to seek it out, and I never got a great answer for it. But what happened is it started to go down the path of meditation and exploring this topic we're having very broadly, and that meditation part sort of showed up. because I was meditating off and on from 2017 to up until 2 years ago, irregularly, but it'll start to open things up, right? Um, and then I go to the psychic in Carlsbad with my wife, randomly, randomly go. There's no random, so I say that
I
facetiously,
know.
right? There's no
How, okay,
coincidences.
before you go any further, how's your wife on all these topics? Is she into it? Is she like a skeptic? Where does she stand with it?
She has heard some crazy shit come out of my mouth. She is so tolerant of the world that I experience that most people don't, right? I mean, there's a lot of tolerance there for sure.
Okay, so she's loving
Uh,
all of you.
yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say it's been easy for either of us or both of us, right? In spots, because it's like,
Can we pause on that topic for a second? Because I think
yeah,
this is
yeah, go ahead.
important. Because I know that a lot of people, when they're going through their awakening process,
Mm,
whether it's awakening to very spiritual things or maybe awakening to the truth about the health industry, the food industry, like there's a lot of different
mm,
ways, the financial industry, there's all different ways that people can start to awaken.
hmm
When you start to go through your awakening process, it's you feel alone in many ways because
hmm
you don't know who you can talk to.
hmm
But there is also a form of separation that you unconsciously are not even realizing you're creating as well, because you no longer you want other people to see what you see, but not realizing that that's not the point. The point is, how do you still see everyone exactly as where they're at so that they can also can reciprocate seeing you exactly where you're at.
Yeah, that's certainly part of it. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Because I think that's one of the little tripwires that everyone hits. All like myself, I don't even know how many times I hit that tripwire, but you want so much for other people to see what you see because for one, it's amazing, it's very intriguing and interesting, but also you start to form this concept that well, it's very easy to go into a lot of the fear porn that comes with the awakening path. And so you could think like everyone, like if you don't wake up soon, we're all doomed, like this earth is going to hell in a handbasket. And it's not the case. Everything has been orchestrated perfectly, but it's very difficult to not see it from that perspective when you are first going through that part of the journey.
All true. Yeah,
So okay, if you were to for anyone who might be listening right now who's maybe at the earlier stages of that journey,
yeah.
and what would your advice be to them given everything that you've learned so far that would help them navigate the acceptance?
I'll volunteer this. There was about 9 months where I went from not hearing and seeing. This was way before the animals, right? So somewhere between 2017 and I don't know 2019, something like that. Not hearing and seeing things and feeling things to suddenly seeing and hearing and feeling things, and that's some shit right there. I mean, that your reality is changing when you're not 100% living in the 3D world and you start to go up into other worlds where that perspective that you're just sharing, that's where that lives, right? But you still need to anchor it into daily activities down here, into waking up, eating breakfast, dealing with people, your full-time job, people, right? All the traffic, all the things around you and what it means. Um, that is you're I found myself struggling with that, right? And struggling with the shift in reality for about I'm a slow learner. So for about 9 months, like this is going on. And I'm going, man, I think I may be losing my shit, but I can have rational conversations. I can balance my checkbook. I can show up to work and get my job done. Like I'm not running red lights. Like everything is fine. But there's this one piece that has got me wondering about what is happening with myself, really, right? And it was probably about the 9 month mark where I sat myself down and I said, it sort of doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which path you choose. You can say, I don't want to do this. None of this is real, and go back to full-time job doing all the things, right? Like whatever that meant for you. Or you can go, I cannot deny what's been happening. I have no idea where it's going, but oh my God, it's fantastic. Like this makes life way more interesting and fun and uncomfortable. And I can't wait. And there's no path. There's no one wrote a roadmap to this thing, right? No one did that. Um, and so choose because a foot in both doors or not being able to pick a lane is so unhealthy. And at the end of it, I thought there's absolutely no way I can deny these experiences and feelings that I've had, regardless if no one else can relate to them the way that I do. It just doesn't matter. I would feel way more awful denying self and going back versus moving forward, not knowing what's coming at me.
Yeah, very
So
true. Yeah.
so take you can suffer in it, and I did. You can suffer in it, but at some point you need to make a choice to move forward or not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And moving forward, I think one of the ways that if I could go back in time and change a few things and, you know, go back to my, self that was just kind of going through the deepest part of my awakening phase would be to really honor what I'm experiencing and be willing to share it, but with the caveat that you're not asking anyone to change their belief system. You don't need anyone to see it the way you're seeing it. But if they could be just willing to let you express it and share it,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's something that I would go back in time to kind of give a little piece of advice to myself. Not from a place of feeling like other people need to see it the way you're seeing it, but from this place of understanding you're the one who's changing really rapidly. And that can be as scary as it is for you. It's probably really scary for other people who've known you a
that's
long
true.
time, right? And, but also not diminishing that you are changing and it's real and you've got to honor it.
Yeah, yeah, and also, um, not everyone's going to agree. Not everyone's
Mhm.
going to see it your way.
Yeah.
Just like I was questioning my own reality, that people are going to question it, right? You're going to draw people closer to you. You're going to push people away,
Hmm.
and it's just what's going to happen, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So you're going through this awakening phase. What
Mhm.
was one of the craziest experiences you had that was like really jarring for you? Because you
Mm,
said you were seeing things, you were hearing things.
yeah, I think it was just all of that wrapped up was something that I just wasn't really expecting. And it sort of came on slowly and it was super cool. But after a period of time, you go like, where's this going? What is this doing? What does it all mean? And
What's
when
the
you can't,
point?
right. And when you can't, so here's the difference, right? In the 3D world, everything makes sense,
Hmm.
right? You have a hammer and a nail and you hit the nail and with the hammer and this is what happens, right? You know what's going to happen. Over here, you really don't. You're not quite sure. But, um, it's the right way to live, I would argue. That's the right way to go about time on the planet is going down the path of the unknown, trusting self and figuring it out versus subscribing to someone else's quote unquote roadmap because they said they had it figured out. They didn't. I mean, maybe they have $1 million in the bank, maybe they look happy, maybe they have the car, maybe the house, maybe all the things. That doesn't mean they figured it out. It just means they have the things. Maybe both. Um, and you can have both, but it shouldn't be at the expense of not of what we're talking about here.
Hmm.
That's not what we need. We need more of what we're talking about here. We need to normalize this conversation
Hmm.
because there's a lot of, well, that sounds crazy.
Yeah.
It does. It does sound crazy. Also, it's not.
Yeah. So, okay, so you go to see this medium with your wife.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So it was in Carlsbad. We go to the psychic fair. We do this. We walk the floor. We don't see anyone. Then we approach the floor from the opposite direction, and right in front of us is a sign that says psychic medium, medium Adelita. And I said to my wife, "Hey, what do you think of her?" And my wife said, that sounds great. Like, why don't you go first?" Okay, so I sit down, and I've been to psychics before, but a psychic medium just wasn't my thing. It was a little too much for me, and And within 60 seconds, I'm just like bawling my eyes out. My dead cat came through. He lived to be 22. And the last 2 years of his life, we're going back and forth to the vet. And the messaging she gave me as she started the session, she says it's an animal that's showing up, and I'm still not getting it. I'm still not getting what's going on. And then she says, "You did too much," and I'm like, "Ah, waterworks." Um, the last 2 years of his life, we're back and forth to the vet. So like you did too much was a perfect summary of what it was. Like it was treating the symptoms of old age, like not the human me, not wanting to let go of the animal. And the animal's giving me all the signals of it's time to go, dude. Like what's going on here? Uh, and so that was a perfect summary. Yeah. And so now I'm like, oh shit, this is real. Right. I'm like, oh, coming to terms with what's going on. And she goes, they're now showing me Dr. Doolittle. They're showing me that you can talk to animals and it's going to be easy for you. And I thought, among other things, because there's a slew of emotions that are going on. I was like, oh yeah, that's true. I don't have any reasons why I feel that way, but that's true. Yeah. And so I go home and I do my typical meditation that I've been doing off and on for years. And I try to find my living cat, Chucky, who's here. And I see this bright light, and it's like the light you would associate with like higher level beings, spirit guides, that type of thing. And I go, man, no, this isn't working. My cat is not a high level being. He shits in a box. He shits on the floor. He's not a high level being. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
And so I call her up and I said, easy, like this is not even working, you know. And she was great. Her feedback was, well, you're expecting to see things in a very specific way. It's not how this works. So just be open to the information that comes. What you get is what you get. Well, that sounds really simple, right? Okay, so great. And so I decided to give it a second shot, and I get a couple animal communication sessions booked up with folks who actually do this. I get a ton of books. I'm just trying to learn how this works. What does it
Yeah.
even look like, right?
Sure.
And one day, as I'm going to one of these animal communication sessions, just like this on Zoom, I stood up from the dining room table and I get this flash. I see this scene um, out of Return of the Jedi. It's the end of the movie where you see the ghost of Obi-Wan and Yoda, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm being shown a student-teacher relationship. Man, I know it's coming from Chucky, living cat Chucky, and I'm pretty sure that I'm not the teacher, I'm the student here,
Yes.
right? Which made that light. That was his introduction to me as to who he was, right? And so I get on the line with this animal communicator, and she says, "So, do you know who he is to you?" Yeah, I do. He just showed me, and so now we're talking about what that means, and he's here to open me up, and all the things around it. And so it was. I mean, that was different. That was different how that showed up. So maybe if it's with jarring, maybe it's clarity. I don't know, but that's how it started for me.
That's really interesting. I mean, this is such a common um m misunderstanding that we think that because we're the humans that we are coming in from like these higher dimensional beings taking form. And
Hmm.
in some cases, yes, you know, but that doesn't just automatically mean that those in the animal kingdom couldn't be at the same level or even higher than what.
That's right.
And I know one of my friends, her dog has come in at he's like very, very high level, um, high dimensional being, bringing in a lot of information. So, okay, so do you and Chucky start? How do you relate to Chucky after that? Now that you know that Chucky's your teacher,
Yeah, it's a great. Yeah.
does Chucky want a new name?
I
Like
even
some
asked.
more spiritual, high dimensional
Oh,
name?
oh, that is a spiritual name.
Yeah.
um, no, his name is the same. With tons of nicknames, and so he's amazing. He's amazing, and so that was the first time that I got a communication. Well, second time that I got a communication of like, what does this even mean? Right? Like just starting point of all of it. But I didn't really have a lot of communication with him for a while. And then there was an instance, it was nutty. It was the first time that I heard something from an animal, and it was him. And I had a buddy of mine and his wife over in the summertime, maybe 2 Julys ago. I can't even remember at this point. And she brought over some incense. And she said, "I heard you guys like incense. I wanted to give you something. Thanks for for hosting us." And I said, "Thank you for the incense. I will burn it on the coffee table. It'll help keep Chucky off the coffee table." And she's sitting, I'm on the opposite side of the coffee table. She's sitting next to him. Things are fine up until the point where I say that. And he starts to hiss at her. This little cat, with the exception of his housemate coming back from the vet, smelling like all the other cats and hissing at her. With the exception of that, this is the second time he's hissed at someone. He just doesn't. He just doesn't. And so I'm like, I don't understand what's happening right now. Like, just give him some space. Like, just let this play out. Like, whatever. And as I go to sleep that night, I was having the thought of like, what the hell was that about? Right. And as soon as lights go out and my head hits the pillow, I get woken up by him. And what I hear is, who is she to tell me what to do?
I love it. I love it.
And and so now I'm having a conversation with him, like, buddy, like, she has nothing to do with this. I'm the one who wants you off the coffee table. She could care less about you being on or off the coffee. We talk about this all the time,
Yeah.
right? And then the next day he was a sweet little cat to her again. Just like, it was perfectly fine. But it was interesting how like that got misinterpreted for him at the sort of cat 3D level, right?
Yeah.
Where my introduction to him was not that. It was very different. So there's like a personality of the cat, there's a higher level being of the cat, right? There's a body of the cat. Same thing with the humans, right?
Yeah.
Same
Yeah.
thing applies. And so that was the first time I heard from him was from the cat personality level. Yeah. So that was funny. But then he has given me, he's really good. Like, he really is here to open up and guide.
Mhm.
And so um that has been more the conversations, the pieces of information that he drops on me is
Okay.
sort of corrections. Yeah, go ahead.
That's so cute. I love that. And here's why I love that so much. Because ah, when you're going through your spiritual evolution, okay, and your own personal evolution, wanting to become a better person, wanting to evolve to higher levels of spirituality, maybe trying to move more into a oneness consciousness and love for all and all those beautiful things that we think
Yep.
all these higher dimensional beings look at us like, they just have these beautiful hearts and are just so open. And maybe that's the case. I don't know, you know? Um, but you can't deny your humanness, just like Chucky can't deny his catness down here, Like, there is this part of like, I totally have a side of me that's a little like snarky, I'll be a little sarcastic and I'll like throw some shade every now and then to like someone. But that's just my humanness. It doesn't mean that like, I'm not still also participating in other ways and trying to evolve. But like, I think sometimes we go to this place where we deny that part of ourselves. Meanwhile, like, again, it goes even right back to the very first message you got with San Pedro is like, you need to love all of you,
It's true.
right?
Yeah.
And so how do you accept knowing that, yeah, you can become a lot more mature in how you handle things and look at different perspectives, but also know there is still this part of you that's very much like that 3D human ego still intact. And you're gonna have some, I don't know, moments where I don't even know what to call it, but like you kind of pick up those drama kind of personalities, those dramatic personalities that can easily get wounded.
hmm hmm
I
Yeah.
personally like love that. I think that's a really good indication of showing that no matter how high dimensional you are, and yes, some people come onto this planet and they become big gurus or leaders that like are globally known and even through history books. But I'll bet you they have human moments, where like there's a moment of weakness and it doesn't mean that they're bad or anything like that. Like I personally kind of have learned to love that kind of part of myself. I don't want it to always come out, but I mean, like every now and then I'm like, yeah, there she is. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's the deal we made, right? Like this is the vehicle for spending time on the planet. So we're a bunch of chemicals. We're going to react to things sometimes, right? We're a bunch of
Yeah.
baggage walking around too. Like that's why we're here, right? That's the syllabus. Those are the lessons. So we get to live through those lessons through the body and figure it out along the way. So, I mean, I think what's most important is, yeah, that's what's gonna that's gonna happen, right? Because it will. But how quickly can we recover from it? How deep do we need to go with it, right? Like you don't need to swim in the pool of garbage every time you react to something, right?
Yeah.
Like the pool can get cleaner and more shallow along the way. And if that happens, then great, you're going in the right direction. If you stay in the deep end of the crap pool, well, that's a different conversation,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So it's just part of the deal.
Hmm. Hmm. So, okay. So now Chucky's really kind of starting to connect with you more
Hmm.
often.
Hmm.
Is Does Chucky come in to help you during your communication sessions with other animals?
Oh,
Like,
yeah. Um, sometimes he'll come up on my lap and he'll just sort of be there, and I can feel him. Like he shows up, like everything has a little energetic signal to it, and he has his own. So that happens sometimes. He's also, and I forgot I did this, and this is why I started to get a meditation journal. Is I asked him to connect me to prior cats that I had in my life, to Henry, who was the one who showed up, 22 years old, and and he connected me with Henry, connected me with another cat that I had growing up. So he's was able to open those doors for me with my other cats, which was super cool. Um, but yeah, I mean, he does his own thing. A lot of it is sitting on the sidelines, just waiting for the right time to play, so to speak, right? Like
hmm
he doesn't have to come in and muck around on the field all day long. That's not the position he plays.
hmm
Like when he needs to come in and make sure the game goes in the right direction, he comes in and plays that position.
That's as a good teacher would do.
Right. That's right.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're starting to open up to communication with animals. Was there anything specific that you did? Like, I'm wondering because there may be people in my audience who are also feeling similarly, where they're starting to connect with animals or they've been wanting to. What were
Yeah.
there any techniques that you used that were really good, beneficial to you?
It was I started to just buy a ton of animal communication books. I love the stories. I just love them all. And everyone has their own way of connecting,
Hmm.
whether it's the animal communication books or meditation books or meditation videos. Like it's all a lot of it's the same. It's also very different, right? There's nuances to it, all of it. And I kept reading. Connecting with animals is very similar as it is to connecting with humans. And in 2017, after San Pedro and with the meditation, I was working with a gentleman who's a dear friend today, and he's the one who introduced me to meditation and a system of working with energy and tracking people's energy. And so that statement of it's the same thing as connecting with people as it is animals, like it made sense to me, but I didn't have the experience to go, oh, now I get it, right? It's really different reading about skydiving than it is actually skydiving, right? In theory, practical and theory are the same, right? In practicality, they're very different, right? That holds true here. So part of going through getting to where I am today was horses kept showing up as what do you do with horses? You should work with horses. I wasn't doing anything with horses. So I found a local organization, a sanctuary, a horse sanctuary, among other things. And I started to volunteer there. I shoveled a lot of poop for a long time, for about 9 months. It seems like a lot of things are like on a 9 month schedule. It's interesting.
Hmm.
Um, And and the first day I'm there, there's a turnout's happening. So there's a bigger pen and there's four stalls, and the four horses that are in the bigger pen are going to go into the four stalls where the other four horses are, right? So these four, one at a time, one has to come out, one has to go in, right? And all four from the stalls are now out, and they're running around because they're out of the stalls, they're in the bigger pen, they're having fun. And I didn't grow up with horses, so I don't know what to do. I don't know how to handle myself. So I'm sitting there sort of, like deer in headlights. And someone yells, "Put your hand into a fist and give them the back of your fist." And that's how you say hello. That's sort of the equivalent of a handshake. And so I do that, and the alpha big white horse comes through. And I make connection. Oh, that's what they're talking about. Great. But then my hand goes down because I'm still sort of terrified with these horses. And then Bravo comes through, and he walks through and he puts his nose to my hand. So he's the one who introduced the handshake, right? And I'm like, oh, I think you're my guy. I think something's going to happen here with you, right? So he showed me the introduction of an animal. Like, you need to get permission, at least minimally in person, is my
Hmm.
experience, right? Like, do you go up to people and hug them when you meet them first time? Maybe if you talk to them, if there's a
Yeah.
thing going on there. But typically it's a handshake, right? That's the introduction, right? Maybe if you had a good time, you're going to give them a hug goodbye. But initially, it's a we're asking for permission, and that's what I was shown. And then, the next 2 weeks, here's what happened. I'm in the pen with Bravo, and I feel the connection happen, the type of connection I would typically feel like when I'm working with a human and seeing where their energy is.
Hmm.
I was like, oh, so that's what it means. That it's just like with animals. Now I'm starting to pick up what people are talking about it because I'm experiencing it. Got it. Okay, that's cool. And and then that was it. That was the experience that day. And then the next week was, I get into the pen, and I already feel the connection there. It's already happening. And then I feel it drop. And I thought, I'm pretty sure he's going to walk away from me right now. And sure enough, about a second or two later, he starts to walk towards the opposite side of the pen. And now I'm putting the pieces together. Okay, so it's that introduction. It's that initial hello, however that shows up, be it physical or not, right?
Hmm.
Like on Zoom or off Zoom, but not physical. And then there's the energetic connection, and that's where the communication happens. And then there's the disconnect, and that is the basic process: the introduction, the hello, the energetic connection, um, introduction slash permission, introduction, or the energetic connection, and then the disconnect.
So it's very similar to like ceremony, where you may light a
Yeah,
candle to open up the ceremony.
that's it.
You may receive communication, then you're always told to close ceremony, blow the candle out. Like I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
closing the portal, opening a portal, like all those kinds of
yeah,
things.
that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that's it.
That's super cool. That's really cool. So, can I ask you a question about
Mhm.
an animal that I'm kind of close to?
Yeah.
Is that possible to
I
do?
mean, we'll see. I mean, we'll see. I mean, let's go. Keep on going. Yeah.
Okay. So, there's a guy that I've been dating for a little while, and his dog for she's like a Great Dane, beautiful dog, and I mean, I love dogs, but for some reason with her, I love her so much. Like, there's just this crazy connection, and sometimes I look at her and it's I don't know, like I pick up on things, but she's older. She's like 8, and Great Danes don't live for very long. Um, I don't know. You picking up anything?
Yeah, but we would probably want to talk about it afterwards.
Oh, okay.
I think that'd be best. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything that you
Uh-huh.
can share that means seem innocuous?
No, she's willing to chat.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All
Yeah.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, guys.
You feel free to share it if you want.
Okay.
Later.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
oh
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Oh, interesting. All right.
Hmm.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Has anything come through while doing a session with a client, and their animal that opened up your eyes to something that you weren't expecting?
Yeah. I going back to Chucky showing up and making his initial introduction, right?
Mhm.
I mean, when Adelita said you're going to be able to talk to animals and it's going to be easy for you, I thought, yeah, sure. And I mean, yes. And I had no idea what that would look like. I had no idea what the conversations would look like, what the information would be about. I just didn't give it any thought other than like, how is it going to work and how do you go about doing this, right? Uh, but when the conversation started to show up, and um, some of it was sort of because of the books I was reading. I was like, oh, it's probably going to sound a little bit like this, and a lot of it wasn't. A lot of it wasn't. It's really about the human for me. So when and some of the dogs show up, like I have a problem with this dog, like I hate the cat. They have sometimes the personality comes through, and you're like, oh, okay, like he really
Yeah.
doesn't like the other cat. But a lot of the times, it's really from this perspective of want to help the human, and and they come through with such clarity and sometimes attitude. Uh, but the clarity, the straight shooting of it all is amazing, is amazing. Way more straight than a human being would be. Like a lot of times we're like, what the hell does this person want from me? Right?
Hmm.
Animals, you're like, and that's the information that's important. Done and done. Right? There's no trying to skirt around it. There's no trying to reframe it. Let me say it in a different way, Nicole, that I think you can understand, aka me trying to put you down. Like there's nothing weird about it. It's just here's the information. It's very straightforward. It's
Okay.
amazing. So like there was a woman who came to me a while back, and this is typical. This is a typical type of thing. I ask people for their first name, their last name, age of animal, like really basic information, right? And then I ask people for three questions. What would you like to get out of this? My promise is I'll ask. I can't make any promises that they'll answer,
Hmm.
right? And her thing was, my dog is biting people. It's biting people when they come over. Would you tell my dog to stop? I'll ask the question. There's no telling your dog to do anything. And so I tune into this little chihuahua, and the dog says, you need to ask her about her job." And I said, "Well, why am I asking her about her job? Because that's what has to change." "Okay, got it. Thanks." So I get her on the line. "Did you talk to my dog?" "Mhm." "Did you tell him to stop biting people?" "No." "Well, what'd you talk about?" "What do you do for a living?" "I'm unemployed." "No, you're not." "How are you making money today?" "I'm a private driver, Ubers, limousines, that type of thing." "How's that working out for you?" "Well, I have spinal issues. My doctor tells me I shouldn't even be in the chair because after about an hour or two driving around, my back is all banged up. It's very irritating. It's very painful." "Well, your dog said you need to change your job. Like that's the thing that is most important right now for you." "Well, my dog's been biting people for 8 years. I've only been driving cars for a year." Now, we didn't have time to go into each and every job, and chances are they were all not making her happy. They were all not the way she should be contributing. They were all not the ways to light her up, right? Because 8 years is a long time for a dog to be biting people. It's also a long time for a human to be in the wrong professions,
Yeah. Hmm.
right? And so the dog would, yes, the dog was biting people, but the dog was being a mirror of her emotions. She was clearly angry when she showed up. Like as soon as Zoom goes on, I'm going, oof, talking to someone who's a little out of sorts here.
Oh,
She's mad. She's
yeah.
mad. Let's see how this goes, right?
It's kind of like how they say dogs look like their owners.
It's yeah. Yeah. So if you were to take the uh that I mean that's a 3D dimension of it all. If you were to take the
Hmm.
fourth dimension of how that sounds, there's a mirroring behavior, there's a modeling behavior. Sometimes they show the symptoms in the body if they really, like as a learning tool. And for her, this was a mirroring thing,
Hmm.
right? For me, I have a little boy, Chuckadoo. Less so now, but I mean, well, no, it's not true. He's very much like clockwork. He wants to play every night. Every night he wants to play with the little laser or the feather or whatever. And he calls for me. He will wait for me every night. And yeah, the cat likes to play. Also, the human, me, I don't have the best relationship with the computer. I will grind. I will grind on the computer to get things done, right? And there's a time to step away. There's a time to step away and play.
Yeah.
And so that's the lesson he teaches me. So she was getting a mirroring behavior. And with Chucky, I get the modeling behavior specifically with the play. So, I mean, so
Wow.
that's frequently how these types of things show up.
Okay. Interesting.
Because you'll come to me, Nicole, and be like, my dog is doing a thing, 3D behavior. And I'll be like, hey, Nicole, let's talk about thing. And you're like, what the hell does that do with my dog? I'm like, "Right, I asked your dog, and here's what your dog wants to talk about. Like, this is just what it is.
It's so interesting because, from the human perspective, really very just on the surface, if you look at the reason why people get dogs or cats or whatever, a pet, it's
Yeah.
like they want to have company, but they also like they want something to love and to like be around them, and they're just like, I'm going to
Yeah.
take care of this animal, not
That's right.
realizing that also that animal is there to take care of you as well.
It's an unconditional love conversation.
Hmm.
Right. I mean, we had when taken to the extreme, dogs will rip someone's face off because why? Because the owner trained it that way, right? Largely speaking, right? That's not entirely true, but there's a lot of human conditioning of animals and turning into weapons, right? But taking that out of the equation, the critters are here largely with the intention of unconditional love and support. I mean, that is that's the summary of it all
Do
of
you
why they
ever
show up.
do you ever get information about any kind of soul contract that the animal may have with the owner?
Oh, no, this was trippy. Well, now with the owner. Um, so soul contract would be a little, I'm gonna maybe this is a nuanced conversation, but purpose of why I'm here and lessons to teach you. If we said that was part of the soul contract, then all
Okay.
the time. Then
Okay.
all the time. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. All the time. There's some cases where I would say there was an actual like Chucky showed up to help me open up. Is that a soul contract? I don't know. Like that was his job. He chose to do it. He took me on
Hmm.
as an assignment. Soul contract? I don't know. Depends on the definition. Um, but there was a case where I was talking to an animal, a cat, and the cat, this was super fun. The cat brought in a dead cat as part of the reading. And so now I'm sitting there talking to both of them, and I see them in the doorway. They just won't move forward. And and it turns out because I was like, someone has to move forward for this conversation to happen. Like, what's going on here? And what I heard was, but we're the same. And so they actually have a contract where there's one cat on the planet, but the other cat will come in, spend time in that body, and spend time with the human,
Like a walk-in.
and then exit the body. So that was contractual.
Oh my,
Yeah,
really?
that was a ton of fun. Yeah. And I was I this was such an odd and wonderful time to have with the animals. And I'm explaining it to this woman who was very tapped in. And she's like, "Oh, well because they have a contract." Oh, well that makes sense. And then we kept on going down the path of what showed up because it was I had no idea. I mean, and here's part of what you had like in my position you go, "Here's what I heard." And it sounds like it sound I'll give you just random things that come through. Like Wheel of Fortune, like can soda can. It's just like like what do these things mean? Like
Yeah.
you sort of sound like a crazy person saying random shit, right? But um in the case of Wheel of Fortune, like it was such a lovely time with this woman and the dog and the dog was just showing me things that she liked to do with the human just random things running in the yard like whatever it was and like up until the point where uh Wheel of Fortune came in it could have been like oh I like to run in the yard um like to go outside there's a fence outside like it could have been just like things you could have read random things my dog likes to do with me go look it up it could be online right and so that was sort of what was happening until we got to Wheel of Fortune. And so now I'm in the position of going Wheel of Fortune or not saying Wheel of Fortune, right? And I was like, Wheel of Fortune. And there's silence. And then she starts dying laughing. And she says, we watch it every night together. Right. So, like, you have to say it. In the case of
Mm-hmm.
Can Can, Soda Can, it was a woman who rescued a pit bull and rehomed him with someone that she was just like, what a mismatch. I would have never expected this. And what I heard her say, I didn't expect that. And also this person drank a lot of soda. So from the perspective of the dog, like can, soda can makes sense. And this is all from like we come in here and go, and it's the perspective of the human. It's not. It's the perspective of the animal.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it's a couple things. It's wherever they are with their higher self, right? Like Chucky shows up and shows me things from that perspective, but it's also from his perspective as a cat. Like who is she to tell me what to do about not going on the coffee table? Right. So both of those things are at play.
Mm-hmm.
And you sort of have to figure out what they are from the animal's perspective. But it's very it feels like very random nonsense that comes through, but after you say it, like it all sort of lines up.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really
That is
fascinating.
that's the tricky thing about doing intuitive work is sometimes the messages make no sense to you and you're not even sure like am I even supposed to convey this? Like but you it is your job to share what you hear or see so that the other
Yeah,
person
that's
can
right.
make what they need to do with that. Because
Yeah.
yeah, I've had things come in where I'll share something with a client after being like, I don't know if I want to say that. Like I don't,
Hmm.
and then I'm like, well, I have to. It's my job. And so and I'll share it and I'll ask the question about it and then they're like, "Oh, I'm funny you say that." I'm like da 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 and I'm like, "Oh, okay, now that makes sense." Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I've also had cases where and so I stopped doing this. Where cases where I'll get in line with you and I'll go, "Hey Nicole, what's going on?" And you'll be like, "Blah, blah, 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 blah." And I'm going, "Oh, that's that. Right. Because I take notes. I talk to the critters on like day one, and then I'll talk with the human on day two or whatever it is,
Okay.
something like that. But critters first, human second.
Hmm.
And and I've had a couple conversations like that, and I'm like, there goes almost everything in my notes. Right. And it's validating for me, but it's way less interesting for the person receiving the information now. Right. Like he just repeated things back to me. So I'm like, I don't do that anymore. I don't want the less I know about you, the
Hmm.
the better it is for both of us. It's
Yeah. No,
because it's not fun. It's not
yeah,
fun
no,
the
I
other way
totally understand
or
what you're
productive.
saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, okay, let me ask you this. What's the most interesting animal that you ever like has there been like an animal that you weren't even expecting to communicate with?
Mm-hmm. Uh, it's probably when. Oh yeah. Oh, this was a good one. This was great. So this was in the summertime. Our we have a sliding glass door in our room in our bedroom, and it was open. Uh, and where we live, we're on a main street, and then there's a group of houses across the street, and then there's a golf course. And there's a lot of coyote activity over there. And this one night, I'm mostly asleep, but there's some disruption, and I'm hearing the sounds of the coyotes, but I'm not awake to it. But I feel my wife get up, and she walks over around the bed, and I see her now staring out the doors. And I'm like, what is she doing there? And then I recognize it's coyote sounds. And as I'm looking at my wife, this was wonderful. As I'm looking at my wife in my brain, I'm seeing these six little energetic bodies that are vibrating. And every time the coyotes went up with their sounds, like bubbles would come out of these little energetic bodies. So I was seeing the energy of the coyotes in my brain as they are activating outside. It was amazing. It was amazing. So like when Adelita showed up and she's like, just accept the information that comes through as it is, like that type of thing would have never shown up. Right. So you got to be open to how it shows up. It is super fun how it shows up. It's amazing.
Oh,
So that
wow.
happened. That happened night one. Right.
Okay.
And I wake up at 5 in the morning and draw this terrible little sketch because I'm like, this was unbelievable. This is gonna be so much fun, right? And then the next night happens. Same thing. Julieta goes around the bed and wakes me up, just bouncing, getting off the bed. And I'm looking at her again, but this time it's not from, it's not a group of coyotes on the golf course. It's one coyote, and it sounds like it's like on the sidewalk close to our unit. It's very, very loud and gorgeous, like this gorgeous sound. I've never heard it like this before. And then as I'm staring at Julieta looking outside, I hear, we're largely here for you because I was the connection the night before, but I'm not the one who woke up and who's appreciating the coyotes and wondering about them. That's Julieta. So that phrase makes sense. Right? There's an appreciation aspect to all of this. Like if you think they're dumb dogs who drag their butts across the rug, right? Like then they are that to you.
Mm-hmm.
Then they are. If you come at it differently and appreciate them for them spending time on the planet, that they're here to help you, that they're living their own existence, figuring things out to some degree too, right? That's a very different come from, right? If you think about them like this, so much can happen. If you think about them like you're up here because you have thumbs and credit cards, and they're down here because they have four legs and they crap in a box, uh, not a lot of good's going to come out of that. Like if you really feel that, you really feel like I'm the best thing on the planet.
Yeah.
That's not it. Mm-mm.
Hmm.
No good's going to come from that with you and the animals, you and your mate, you and the world. Nothing. You'll be the quote unquote winner of the game. You'll have all the toys. Congratulations. Who gives a shit?
That's really cool. So so your wife has some interesting connection to the coyotes?
She has a great appreciation for animals and she calls it like pretty things. Like it's
Mhm.
funny. Like she'll grab whatever. Like I'm trying to find something on my desk, like a rock or a stone or something, and she'll hold it and be like, and I can see her holding it, and I can feel her holding it and really like loving on it. And then like I start to feel the energy moving and warping, and I'm like, damn, like that is, you have such a strong signal. That's amazing. And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, huh, really? Like you didn't. Okay, so we had two very different experiences about the same thing.
Mhm.
Here's was your experience. Here's was my experience. So it goes back to that appreciation. I mean, I have a friend who showed up, a young lady who I've known for a long time, and she said she was looking for a sign. So she goes to Instagram. She sees me talking at a psychedelic uh, club up in Santa Barbara in California, saying, "Hi, my name is. I ate a cactus. I talk to animals." And she sees a little bit of this, and she calls me up and she says, "I had to talk to you. I was looking for a sign. I saw this video, and here we are." Well, what's going on? Well, I'm doing the furniture restoration. Yeah. Well, here's what you don't know. I hear a voice. I get a tap on the shoulder that tells me to go down certain alleys. And every time I get that tap, that nudge, I find furniture every time. And then I pick up the furniture to bring it home, right? Because I'm going to strip it down, right?
Mhm.
And uh, and I start to glean the stories that happened around the furniture. The coffee, the grandma, the dinner table, whatever it is. I'm like, oh shit, you're the furniture psychic. This is amazing. But she has an appreciation
Yeah.
for the furniture that someone chose to throw out. They couldn't see the beauty of it. She does. Right. So when you see the beauty in the thing, of course it wants to talk back to you. When
Mhm.
you think it's nonsense, garbage, you're above it. What motivation does anything have to go, no, let me prove to you that I'm beautiful. Let me prove to you that I'm worthy. Oh, fuck off. Like I am. And
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And if you don't see it that way, then I'm going to wait for someone who does see it that way.
Hmm. What an important lesson for all of us to hear.
Yeah, it's
Like
pretty good.
an important reminder, I should say,
Yeah.
as we go through life. And yeah, the things that we think are nothing, everything is something.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything. Yeah.
Wow. Well, what a pleasure having you on the show, Nick. Thanks so much
Oh,
for coming on and sharing all of well, your story, your journey, and also all of these interesting stories. It's been fascinating, and um, I mean, one, two, I just love how even with the horses, understanding how anyone out there who wants to connect with an animal or really even anything, I would even say like a tree, like it's asking for permission, to connect is such a huge part of the integrity that we learn when communicating with anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
100%. I mean, it's really, I mean, in the books that I read, and I even had a young lady in Santa Barbara go, I heard you have to ask for permission. And for me, it's the intention of the person,
Yes.
right? And for me, that's what I need to connect. If you don't have intention for me to connect with your animals, I can't connect with them. It just doesn't work for me,
Intention is so key.
right? I
It's
mean,
so important.
unless they want to connect with me for reasons that I couldn't even
Hmm.
explain to you, right? Because they
Hmm.
chose to, because they're sentient beings and they get to do that. But on behalf of you,
Hmm.
you need to have the intention for me to connect with them, right?
Yes.
So different.
Hmm.
So when we go out into the world, we can look at the tree as something we can extract from and don't give it a second thought and burn it in the fireplace, or you can still burn it in the fireplace and but have an appreciation for it and the warmth that it gives you, right? Same action, two different come froms. What's the intention of it,
Hmm.
right? So having respect for all the things out there that have life forces that are not called human seems to be something that we lost along the way and seems to be rather important.
I would say so. And I mean, that goes for everything, even like food, being grateful for the food and
Hmm.
connecting and for the source of energy and sustenance that it's providing you and why we do prayer, why we give gratitude, all of those things. So it all makes sense. It really ties it in very well. Well, please let my audience know if anyone would like to connect with you, whether it's just to learn from you or to get a session with you. How can they find you?
Yeah. You can find me on Instagram if you wanted to at My Cat Schooled Me. It's a half baked. I go on there every once in a while, but the intention is to build it to something that's worth going to more than once a year. But mycatschoolme.com is someplace you can go to book a session for animal communication. If you're interested, and I mentioned this before, the meditation, the practice that I was doing that led up to the day where I was told you're going to be able to talk to animals and it's going to be easy for you. The cactus helped open me up to what was possible. Right. So that was the super cool part. But the integration and the commitment of connecting on more than every 6 months or every 12-month basis is that meditation. And that is the part that I believe made this quote unquote easy for me. So if you want to learn how to connect, and maybe animals will show up for you, maybe trees will show up for you, maybe your guides will show up for you, who knows? But I've worked with a handful of people, and they've all had very interesting experiences of their own that were non-related to animals. So if that's interesting to you to open up your world, great. If you want to have an experience with your animal, that's something different. You could do both there, though.
Okay, I love that. Well, thank you so much. And I know there's a couple of you in my audience who are probably going to be reaching out. I know who you are already. But thank you so much, Nick, for coming on the show. And to everyone else, thank you so much for being here. Of course, share this episode with any family or friends who have animals who it might be helpful for them to hear this show. And don't forget that our 3-day 180 retreat next year, May 2025, is half sold out. So if you'd like to get a ticket, we'd love to see you there. Come and get one of the most transformational experiences of your life and meet some really freaking cool people because the people that are coming so far are pretty amazing. And I would love to see you there. Guys, have an incredible week, and I'll see you next time. Thanks again for joining me for another show on the Enlighten Up podcast. I love you guys so much for all of your continued support. So remember to raise your vibe, find your tribe, and be open to the infinite possibilities held in the mysteries that surround us all. Thanks again for sharing the show with your family and friends. And if you're new to the show and you need to find out more information about me, please head on over to my website, NicoleFrolick.com, where you can join my newsletter. And please follow me on Instagram, Telegram, and YouTube. Keep your light bright, and I'll see you next week.